assessment results, how can you use those results to develop individualized education plan? I'm aware that we've got people from all over the countries and your settings that I'm not as familiar with. So Grace is going to be my cultural translator and a mediator for this conversation, and then explore connections between assessment processes and intervention strategies, okay? So a little bit about my background, and we'll go into a little bit about your background. I started way back in 1990s, and my work with and my passion with special education began with Indian Institute of Cerebral Palsy, where I started as a special education teacher, worked with young children from birth through 21 and beyond, and my area particularly was with the younger birth through about school age children. That's what home-based training, center-based training, working with families, working with educational units, as most of our centers usually are. Then from there, I was lucky to receive Ford Foundation Fellowship in 2002 to come and visit any country in the world. And this is a fellowship for any professional focus. And so I chose to study special education in the United States. And I came to University of Kansas to get my master's degree. And then there was additional funding available. So I also worked towards my PhD degree and graduated with a PhD degree in special education. And from there, I began my work as a professor in 2008 at the University of Northern Colorado. So I've been in Colorado and in the mountains for way too long. And I was a professor, and I was also coordinating. So my area of focus is particularly early childhood. It's a birth through 8 years of age. But then I work within the special education, disability, and early childhood, the intersection of all these multiple areas. That's where my heart lies. And within that framework, I particularly work around assessments, looking for culturally responsive assessment practices. And then I also look at family-centered practices. We have a large number of people. So if you don't mind muting yourself, unless you've got something to say, please. And I see that there's been a hand raised. Grace, do you mind monitoring some of the screens? Because I might not be able to see because I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now. But
Thank you.
If anyone has any comments or you have a question or any concerns, can you please use the chat button, and can you please mute yourself like Dr. Banerjee said, so we don't have interjections. Thank you.
Okay. And then from there, from the Northern Colorado, I came to Denver a few years ago at the University of Denver. And my work currently is as a professor and a researcher. And I get opportunity to train students like Grace, Dr. Grace and Lori, work with them closely on these projects. So Denver's nested in the beautiful mountains, the Rocky Mountains. Okay. So with that, let's look at who are all of you are from. So there's a poll that is launching, and tell me, where are you from? Nigeria, India, or any other country? Nigeria mostly. We've got about, okay, good numbers. Excellent. Give you another 5 seconds to finish. Okay. So here is where most of our folks are from. About 20 of you, we've got 31 participants currently, about 20 of you are from Nigeria and about 3 people from India. Excellent. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to say, what is your role? Are you a general education teacher, a special education teacher, administrator, family member of a child with a disability, a child or a youth? Are you other related service providers like nurse, social worker, physical therapist? And Anne and V, I see you. You've raised your hands. I'll call upon you. If that's something you can put into the chat, please go ahead and put into chat, and Grace will be happy to answer you. Okay, excellent. We have again had 23 folks who have responded. Most of you are general education teacher. Some of you are special education, and some administrators, family members. And you may be wearing multiple hats, but your primary role is what you've listed in this space. Thank you for sharing that information. It gives me a good context in which to provide the responses, to talk about some of the information that we're going to share, okay? So the way I've planned this session is mainly didactic content sharing, where I share a lot of conversations. We have case study reviews or some reviews where you will have engagements, conversations. You will have opportunity to share information. And then if we have time, we'll do a breakout room and then do a large group share and wrap up, okay? I do expect dialogues, active participation, engagement. Please be sure to put in information into the chat or share out verbally if you feel so comfortable. But at the same time, we'll also be, because we are a large group here, make sure that we have opportunities for others to share as well. So we're not taking a lot of Zoom time together. Okay, with that, as you think about this session, because there's a lot of good information, think about, as I talk, think about what is relevant for you. What is a conversation? I call it the dig process. Dig process is where you pick out things that are interesting from the session today. What are the things that catches your attention? Then what are the parts of these sessions that you're going to take to heart and actually start applying, and applying beyond the session? And you might even want to share it with your own colleagues. So use this process as we go through our conversation today, because I do want us to be able to use some of this information for later, and I'll be happy to answer and connect. I'll leave my email information so that you can connect with me later in case you need. I'll also share slides with Grace so she can share them with you for later, okay? So you'll have some of this information for later. So assessment is our topic for the day. Before we begin, we will need to start about, frequently we talk a lot about intervention. How can we intervene? We frequently don't put as much emphasis, in my personal experiences, on assessment. Assessment is absolutely critical because it gives you the framework for the foundation. It gives you the framework for the foundation of where children are currently and where we can take them. It helps us to develop goals that are meaningful. If we don't have the baseline, we may be developing goals that are either too high for the child, or they already may have that information and it's a useless goal. It's a wasted goal, wasted time and resources, right? So, and then assessment is through which we assessment results are used to either include children into general education curriculum or exclude them from general education curriculum participation activities, all of that, right? Because we use these data to determine placements of students or determine whether the child has a disability or not, or does need special need services or not. So that is why it's absolutely critical that we use this process very, very responsibly and give it the thought and relevance that it deserves. We frequently talk about in our field, assessment or intervention of any of our work is guided by three pillars. One of the pillar is policy that comes down from, and Nigeria, and India. I come from India. And so we are really typically lean on policies. We don't have as many strong policies for special education services. There are limited policies, unlike you and the United States, where we have a law that guides special education services. It's not similar. We are, if UNCRPD has been ratified, then Article 24 guides some of the work that we do. You might have your own bodies that drive some of the policies, but they're not as detailed, right? But you might have policies at the center level, the programs that you're working with, or your state level, and then practices. What do you do in the field, and how that guides the work and our practices, and then a literature, the research. So these are the three pillars that guide our work typically, and I will use these three pillars as we talk about the conversations today. So let's make sure that we all have a common understanding of assessment. What do you think assessment is? What does it involve? And you can type in the chat. What does assessment mean to you?
I haven't seen any response in the chat. Let's use the chat button.
Yeah, people are shy this morning, this
No,
evening.
or someone just waiting who will bell the cat. Okay, there you.
Somebody to.
Yeah, Tolulope did. Thank you.
Thank you, Tilla. Framework for foundation of working with children, absolutely, whether they need special intervention or not. Thank you, and I will not try pronouncing all our names today because some of us don't have as simple names as Grace's.
I know. Or do you want me to read them out to you? Or do you want to read them out?
No, that's all right. That's
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
Simply means doing the performance of pupils and students in the various academics. It could be academics, it could be social emotional skills, it could be functional skills, it could be in any areas. Obtaining baseline information, I love that, Ronke. Assessment method of testing a child's ability on a particular field, thank you. Great. I think we've got a lot of good information. So the way I think of assessment is data gathering. Basically, what we're doing is assessment is gathering data, gathering data about relevant information. And I underline the use of the word relevant here. It is absolutely critical.
Hi, Dr. Banerjee.
Shida, then let's give that student the time with Miss Grace because we know that we'll get better outcomes. If the student works better in the morning, then let's make sure that we are packing a lot of good time and learning in the morning. If the student likes to learn about dinosaurs, then our intervention strategy, we absolutely want to make sure that it's about dinosaurs as well. So we do preferences as well. And then families' concerns. How are family going to support us through this learning? And then why do we do that? Because we want realistic goals. We want to develop strategies for intervention. We sometimes use assessment to evaluate our programs. How well are our programs doing? Your special education school, your center, or any other program that you might be in school districts. And then for accountability, because sometimes your policymakers, your funders, may want information from you. Okay, so they might be needing information from you. So you might be doing some things for accountability because your funders are asking for data to be able to continue funding. Assessment is not equal to testing. When we think of testing, it's one test, one tool. When I think of assessment, I think of broad measures. Assessment could include interviews, it could include anecdotal data, it could include observation that's not part of a test. So, assessment could include interviewing other professionals, other teachers in the school. It could include gathering data from families. So, assessment is not equal to testing. What do you think is the difference? And again, you can put that into the chat. I'll give you a few moments to think about it. What are the differences, or at least research it on your own time later. Okay, so testing is just one small portion of the entire assessment. Assessment, we talked about assessment could include for screening. Are there red flags? Does a child or the youth, are we concerned? Then we do a little bit more in-depth assessment. It's almost like you go to your physician and they say, yeah, I've got something's paining, I've got concerns, my shoulder's aching or my stomach is hurting, what do I do? And then the doctor asks you to do more in-depth lab tests, right? So that's your more in-depth, and then from there they diagnose and provide intervention. And then along the way you monitor progress as to say, do we have need to continue with the medicine that they gave us, or do we need to change medicines? So similarly in education we use that similar medical process as we move forward. Okay, so usually we talk about assessments when we, as professionals, we are usually talking about making sure that we are responding to diversity. Diversity could be in the form of cultural diversity, it could be regional diversity. In Nigeria, what Grace helped me, what kind of diversity would you see? In India, it could be caste, religious diversity, socioeconomic diversity, any other forms of diversity, Grace?
Yeah, so we share those as well, religion, culture, and we have
Culture.
ethnicity. Yeah.
Okay. So we need to absolutely make sure that assessment methods for inform are informed by cultural diversity, and we're approaching that. The other thing we want to is assessment bias. One of the reasons that I really got interested in assessment out of all the topics that I could learn about and study is because in India, we were frequently using assessment tools that were either developed in UK, in Australia, in United States, in other countries, and we were using them with children in India. Culture matters, right? And so those tools were normed, and their sampling was done with the children and youth, with students in the United States. And here we were trying to use them in India, where culturally children were very different. And they were language, right? There were tools in English language, where some of us students could speak English fluently, could understand English fluently, some could not. And so that absolutely the test bias, the norming, the language of the tool, the items on the tools, right? Spoons and forks. Can the child eat with fork? No, children in India do not eat with fork. They use fingers, right? Do they sit at the table? So some of those kinds of things, that test biases and the item biases. So that be careful about what your assessment tool is about, and have you normalized that for your own culture? Then our own biases as examiners is we as a child or a student walks into the door, we have our own biases at the back of our mind about what the child and the student and the youth can or cannot do. And so, are we able to put that aside? So, about prior knowledge about that student, all of that. So, think about these biases in assessment as you conduct assessments. One way to avoid these biases is use authentic assessment methods. So using a global perspective, not just one test, but other methods like interviews, like other checklists, data from other teachers, and making a more wholesome collection as well. So let's look at one example of authentic assessment video, and which is not popping up for me right now for some reason. I'll just give you a quick example. What this is a mom speaking to the child and asking, "Oh, tell me, where's your nose? Where's your ear? Where's your tummy?" And so, in a playful manner, the mom is actually assessing this child while the assessor is sitting on the side. So assessors just basically said, "Mom, can you help me ask the child?" Because this child is not going to tell the assessor, the teacher, anything, the professional, because she's a stranger. But this child will definitely respond to the mom. So this is one of the examples of authentic assessments. Okay. So moving on from definitions and types of assessments and purposes of assessments, two, an important part of how do you share assessment results with family members? Because that is one place that, again, when I was a practitioner in India, I felt like I didn't personally didn't do a good job of sharing assessment results. I had all this data about children, but didn't do a really nice job of sharing those results with the families. And so there are multiple. What I'm going to do is when I share this, I'll share some resources. So let's do a poll and sentences will come up. I want you to tell me whether you agree with this statement or not. Okay. Are you ready? First statement:
Yes.
I must share assessment results with family. Do you agree or disagree? Interesting. Let me share our results. We've got most folks agreeing, some disagreeing, and then some not sure, few not sure, and few disagreeing. But agree, I would err on the side of giving the family more information than less about their child. Okay? I would err on the side of giving more information to the family than less information about their own child, because then they can help you with the strategies and make sure that they're following through at home as well. Okay, statement number two: I must be honest in presenting both the child's strength and, oh, let me see if I can relaunch poll. Yes, I can relaunch poll. I must be honest in presenting both the child's strengths and areas of concern. Yep. Thanks for putting some of the answers in the chat as well. So we've got most people here agreeing, yes, we must be honest. If you've got concerns, share them. If you've got strengths, and which you must have strengths always, right? Every child has strengths to share. Definitely share them. Okay. So now let's do this one more. It is best to start off with the negative or the concern first when you're talking to the family. Statement number 3, it is best to start off with the negative or the concern first when you're talking to the family. Agree, disagree, I like that. Thank you. Folks, it's also answering in the chat.
Yeah, we have disagree in the chat too.
Uh-huh. Okay. We've got most disagree, some we say agree. And I'm curious to learn, maybe at a different time, why do you think we should start? When I share results, I use a sandwich approach. Start with the positive, layer with some negatives, not negatives,
Disagree.
but concerns, areas of needs, not negative. I will avoid the use of the word negative, but areas of concern, and then end again with something positive about the child. And that is, it's likely that the families, and I've seen a huge difference in how families respond and how they communicate and work with me later on. Okay. So let's start one more. I should relate the assessment results back to the child's everyday life.
Do you want to say more on this, Dr. Banerjee, to make it clearer?
So when you create the assessment results, you might be able to connect them to the child's everyday life. So the child, like if you say that they're not doing well in math, right? In numbers, they can't additions. How does it relate to their life skills? Why is it necessary that they must have knowledge of numbers? Sometimes it's intuitive, for some families it may not be that intuitive. Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to end the poll now. So we've got mostly agree. I would agree with this statement as well, is that because some families, it may intuitively occur to them why, but sometimes you may have to actually spell it out and say it, why these studying or these results are important, or this learning was important. Okay, one more. I must not share the data with families. They will not understand. Do you agree with this statement or disagree?
We should at some point hear from, people agreeing to some of these questions. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. We will provide some space for that, Grace. I agree, because I'm always curious about the people who are in the outliers as well. Okay. Wow, this is a mixed poll. Okay. We have 41% agreeing and 59% disagreeing. Maybe we should hear, this is a highly divided poll. Maybe we should hear from people who agree, one person
At this point,
or two
right?
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you want to say out loud why you agreed with this.
And please do not feel like, it's possible you said agree and you don't want to speak to that, to let us know why you.
Don't feel pressured to answer.
Yeah, and don't be pressured to answer as well. It's just for us to know what you're thinking and help us also, think about our own thinking, and we're all learning in the process. And there's no right or wrong. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I guess no one. I guess.
Okay. Now I'll give you my
So
rationale
there's
for why
someone.
I would.
There's
Oh,
someone.
there is one person. Ronke. Yeah.
Anything?
Go ahead.
Okay, good evening. Oh, okay. So I said disagree because I feel every member of the family must be a part of the child's progress. So that's really the what the assessment result is like, so they can also help the child.
Yep. Good point that we should be able to share the results with the family members and every family member. Good idea. Anybody else? Saranka disagreed with the statement. I must
So
not share.
someone put in the chat, I do not think it is the best to presume that the families would not understand, and moreover, they need to be carried along. And so that's it.
I, yep, good point. I tend to disagree with this statement as well. And I'll give you my rationale why I disagree with this statement. Because I personally feel we must share all data with the family. It is up to us how we share that data, right? That is why got the degrees, we've gone to school to study this subject. That is why we are educators. Is the process of explanation, that's why we might have a better understanding, but it's just up to us to explain that. So, for example, I'll give you an example. What if you went to a physician, a doctor, and you had a stomach ache, and they asked you to do a whole bunch of lab tests, and then they said, oh, here, take this medication, without telling you why or sharing with you what your cholesterol level or sugar level or any other levels that's causing their concerns and why they're giving you that medication for, right? I am not likely to take that. I'm going to question that doctor. I'm going to go to somebody else and somebody else because I don't know why I'm having to take. Why is he or she asking me to take that medication? So, similarly, my buy in that intervention later on is going to be a lot less. Whereas if the doctor had explained to me very well, it's like, Rishita, this is what happened when your lab test results came in. And this is what I'm thinking. Your heartbeat is higher, your sugar level is this. That is why you need to take this medication every morning before breakfast, all of that. I'm more likely to take it. Right? So, similarly for families, make sure that we give them the full information. But how we present that information is critical. I don't need to know because what my pressure level is, but I just need to know whether it's high or low, higher than normal or lower than normal. Sometimes I might be, because I am nerdy and I like to know more data. That is, I might ask, okay, what is exactly normal? But for some most people, it might be it's high or it's low. Because I would err on the side of providing more data to the family and providing it in a manner in which they can understand. You may use visuals, etc. Okay, I think we've got one more, and I think this is the last one. Yes, it's their right. Okay, data should be shared only during the annual meetings with families. Okay, excellent. We've got about 47 people. Come on, folks. Totally disagree. Right. Okay. Agree, disagree. I'm going to end the poll in about 2 more seconds. Okay, we've got a little bit more disagree, and then a few more who are not sure agree. I would say disagree because you want to share data as much. And again, data means what is, if you've collected the annual data, yes, you shared at the annual meeting. But along the way, you might say, you know what, your son did fantastic today. And he was able to spell all his spelling correctly or something in class, or he got 80% of the spellings correctly. So that is still data sharing, right? Or he made friends with this person if you're working on the social emotional behavior. So those are still data sharing, and you would absolutely want to speak with the family members as and when you see them and let them know along the way, because that is what we call monitoring progress and sharing those results of the monitoring progress. Okay, thank you for humoring me, folks. Appreciate that. There was one more which said I will share assessment results in English only, and that would not be appropriate as well. I'll tell you right away. It's a disagree, because you want to share results in a language that is most appropriate for the family. So when I was in India, there was a time when I was a teacher, I had folks, children in my class who were speaking 5 different languages. And when I had to share results, I would be running to people to say, can you please write this note for me for the family members? Because I couldn't write all 5 languages, of course. And so, at least now with Google Translate, it's so easy to do that, right? So absolutely make sure that you have that Google Translate app, and you can easily, you can still write in English, but you can share it in the language that the family prefers. Okay, so some tips. One of the things you want to do is create a culture in your school around data sharing. Once that culture is set, it becomes automatic. So if you're an administrator, and I notice we've got quite a few people who are administrators, make sure that you are sharing data about the programs, the evaluation. So automatically you're creating a culture of data sharing. So your teachers will also start sharing data with families, with children. And if you've got older children, you want to share data. Remember how when we received our scores on tests, we like to read it as well when we were in school. So similarly, it involves student in that data sharing processes. You must develop a plan for how you want to share data. You may use visuals, you may use portfolios, you might have a booklet, you might do an app. Some of you may have websites that you might use. Some of you may use WhatsApp messaging. Whatever format you use, you must have a good appropriate form of messaging that the family has bought into. So some things that we do here in a lot of schools in the United States is at the beginning of the year, we check in with the family and say, what is your preferred mode of communication? Do you like pamphlets, a letter? Would you like WhatsApp messages? Do you like voice messages? Because not every family is literate, so they might not be able to read your messages. So they might prefer a voice message from you instead. So thinking about some of those messages, and technology has exponentially grown since I was a teacher in classrooms 20 years ago. And so it's such a good friend. So explore technology, and always be mindful of privacy and confidentiality. So when you're sharing things in group messages, make sure that it is absolutely things that you're not sharing any confidential messages about families and children, okay? And their privacy, and avoid jargons. Grace, I noticed you had unmuted yourself.
No, I wanted to let you know that someone had a question, but I think we can take that right after you're done.
Okay, yeah. So this is what I'm going to share with you. These are some of the links and resources. When Grace shares they have some good ideas about sharing results and with the families. Okay, yeah, we can take a question now, Grace.
Okay, Ngosu, I saw your hand. Do you have a question? Uchechukwu? You can unmute and ask your question if you do.
Good evening.
So we can't hear you clearly. There's a background noise. We'll see if you can hear me. It's not clear. So if you want to type it in the chat, that would be great.
Right. Let me type it.
It's not clear still. So you do well to type it in the chat.
Okay, let me.
We'll be able to take it in the chat. Yeah, thank you. Back to
Okay.
you.
We have the video, but we will not watch that now. What I want to get into is the crux of some of our conversation around how do we develop goals and individualized plans. So, individualized education plan in the United States, it's a requirement. It's a legal requirement. It may or may not be a legal requirement in your communities, but at the same time, it's a good practice to develop these plans. Okay, so for every child who is in your classroom, it is a good idea to develop that plan so that whoever is working with the child has a common understanding of what the child's needs are. And then that's how you share it with the family, you talk to families. So, what are the main things you want to put into that individual plans? And Grace, help me out here. What is a typical caseload of teachers in Nigeria? Usually, are you by 10 students working, one teacher, 20 students with special education teachers?
So what it looks like is, so in a general education class, for example, you have, let's say in a elementary school, you may have, I'm not quite sure, I may be wrong, but let's assume you can have like 20 kids in a class. And in that class, you may have, say, 3, 4, 5 children with disabilities. And the teacher in that classroom, some schools will have just one teacher, some other schools will have an assistant teacher. So you have 2 teachers in the classroom. And so they would be
So
responsible.
caseload is manageable for us to develop an IEP.
It is.
It is manageable. Okay. I'm going to answer that question on the chat before we get into the details. Yes, absolutely. Whoever asks the questions, if the family speaks English, and that's a, whatever the language is, you would give the report in English. But don't assume that every family will be able to read and write in English. That's what my point was. So, whatever your preferred language is, family's preferred language. And now with technology, it's really easy to translate documents into another language. Okay.
I think the question was asking, like, if a parent doesn't really understand English and you need to speak in the language that they understand, what do you do? And so I think that's, to your point, it's like we do here, you can have ahead of time, you already know the family that you are going to have the meeting with. And so one way to do that is to have an interpreter, right? Someone who interprets in the language that the parents understand. And you want someone who is an external person, right? Not someone necessarily from the school. And so there's no bias. Yeah. And then Google
Yeah.
Translator, like you said.
Google Translate for verbal language, spoken language, or for written language. In either direction, you can use technology. There are other forms of, and I'll share those as well. There, Google Translate is the most popular. And now with ChatGPT, it can also develop and help you write some of the information. You can use meaningful. ChatGPT, if you didn't know, you could really use meaningfully for your work. It has a lot of good advantages for the work that we do. And that's for another session, a whole session on that. Okay, so the main components of individual IEP are the current. How is the child doing in school now? You talk about in school, or if they're infants and toddlers, then in the program or at home now. So you're talking about what are the skills they already have mastered? What are the skills that are emerging? So you'll have a brief paragraph about it. And then what are the skills that the child has to achieve? Because you want to know that does they have the emerging skills to get to the skills that they've not achieved. So that'll help you write your goals. You want to write your goals in that IEP. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4 goals, but however many, depending on the child's needs. They have to be challenging and they've got to be ambitious. Okay. Absolutely. Make sure that they push the child and you into, but they're still within the zone of proximal development. That means they're still the next step. So if, again, I bring math because math is another subject and it's easy, it's linear, is if the child doesn't have number sense, your goal cannot be the child will learn about multiplication, right? you still need to go through the steps of number sense. Or if the child cannot crawl yet, you're not going to have a goal that the child will run. So make sure that it's still at the next step. They're challenging, ambitious, but still at the next step. Most goals are written for 1 year. So think about the development of the child and how long, how quickly. You have a whole year to achieve that goal. Then what are the services that the child do? Are they going to receive physical therapy? Are they going to be receiving speech language therapy? Are they going to receive special education services? Whatever they need services, if or even like nutrition, like if they've got some nutrition related concern where they have to be need feeding frequently or they need nursing frequently, then there are those services mentioned. Then how are you going to monitor progress? How will you know when the goal has been achieved? And then if the student is not going to be educated in a school setting but needs a self-contained setting, a restricted setting, why and what is the need? And if there are district-wide, in US we do have district-wide assessments. In some of your schools you may or may not have them. And if will the child participate, with the student participating in those? Okay. And then when will you start the services? How long? How frequently will the student receive the services? So this is the very basis of an individual plan. What I have here is some examples of what, there's one which is a completed individualized education plan that you will receive with the first slides, that you can take a look at what kind of things go into each one of them. And then the other one is from our state, that you can use, which is a blank one. Thank you. And can you share also how to use the captioning?
Sorry, Dr. Banerjee. There was a concern in the chat.
That they can't hear my audio.
Yeah, so I private chatted the person to know if it was the audio or the person needed a sign language interpreter, but I just wanted to say, and like someone already suggested, we have the closed caption going on. You can use that as well. And please do well to let me know if there are other concerns that you would want addressed. Thank you.
Yeah. And closed captioning, you can go into your bar and you can have your own individual, because we have initiated closed captioning for you in this session.
Yeah. And there's a sign language interpreter as well, if you need that. And I put that in the chat as well. Just look for the participant with the name sign language interpreter. Thank you.
And sign language interpreter, if I'm going too fast or if you're having trouble, please let me know as well, okay? Okay. Let's look at specifically goals. When writing goals for students, there should be a direct correspondence between the identified need, what is the need of the student, their performance, what is the current performance, and how best to help the student engage with the general education curriculum. But I also understand that not all of us work with students who are at par with general education curriculum. We may be working with students who have significant support needs. So wherever the next level of functioning is, so make sure that goal. So if you have somebody who is 14 years old, but who's developmentally performing at 5-year-old in literacy skills, your goals will be at 4-year-old or 5-year-old for the 5-year-old. However, your strategies and your reading materials must always be age appropriate, okay? You will not talk to them as if you were talking with a 5-year-old. You will not use storybooks for reading which are meant for 5-year-olds, because developmentally you want to be as close to their chronological age as you are. And sometimes we make that mistake. as we are thinking about strategies. Okay, and then if the student is at the transition age, so sometimes in the United States, by 15 years old, when the child turns 15, we immediately start thinking about their transition plans and what they're going to do in the transition. So what is the next step after they finish school? So start thinking about that and working with families on that as well. Your goals, we use a SMART acronym here frequently to make sure that our goals are very clear and they're achievable. So the goals are specific. That means they tell you exactly what you want the child to learn. They're measurable, that whether Grace sees that goal or I see that goal, I know exactly what we both want from the child. So they're very specific and they're measurable, that I can measure that. And I'll give you examples in a little bit, okay, for us to practice. That they're really achievable by the child, that they're not so far out that the child will not be able to achieve. And then they're relevant. That means they're helpful for the child to get to the next level. You don't want a child to learn skills that are splintered, that have no relevance for their daily life. And then they're time bound. So in 1 year, in 6 months, so you're giving some kind of a time limit to your goal, okay? So we're going to practice these goals in a little bit. Are you ready? Not yet. So you always include measurable level of attainment, performance level 2, achieve mastery. And then you might say the child will do it with 80% accuracy, or they will be able to talk 100 words per minute. So you will have some level percentage or response, or they will get 10 multiplication sums right out of 20. So whatever your level is, you can add that. Or you can put a frequency when you're talking about measurable goals, that they will do it 3 out of 5 times when the teacher asks them to do something. So it could be either frequency or it could be a level of achievement. But make sure you have that, because otherwise there's no way you know whether the child has achieved the goal and whether you can get into the next step or not. Okay? And let you 5 seconds to read the slide. And then you must have your evaluations scheduled weekly, monthly, whenever you want them to do this. Because you do want to move to the next goal. And for that, this level of measurement and attainment is absolutely critical. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example. Herbie is a young boy who can count to 50. This is a narrative. This is what we know. He can count objects to 50. He can recognize and write numerals 0 to 9. And he can group objects in sets. He recognizes a line, square, and circle, but he does not recognize triangle or rectangle. So we know his skills that he does not know. He cannot add or subtract 2 digits by 1 digit, problems without regrouping, and he has not attempted multiplication yet. These difficulties in math inhibit progress in general education curriculum. Okay, so here's what we know. He cannot count above 50 or write numerals above 9, and he's in first grade, so which are usually first grade skills. So based on that, we've said when directed by the teacher, Herbie will rote count and write numbers to 120. Because remember, this is a 1-year goal with no errors, 3 out of 3 trials over 3 consecutive weeks. So you've got measurable, attainable goal, which is the next step, okay? So this is one of the goals. The other goal, based on the same information that we have, we know that he cannot recognize triangle or a rectangle. I apologize for the spelling error here. Given a sheet of geometric shapes, Herbie will correctly mark a rectangle, triangle, See how we've extended to cube and cylinder as well. 2 out of 2 consecutive trials over 2 weeks. Okay, so this is another example with the same information, how we can develop different kinds of goals. The third one was around his subtraction and addition skills, right? So given 10 addition and 10 subtracting problems, 3-digit by 3-digit. See, remember, he could not do it 2-digit by 1-digit, but we have already gone into 3-digit because it's a 1-year goal. He will solve and write 9 out of 10 times. We are not expecting 100% accuracy here. We are okay with 90% accuracy in 2 out of 2 trials. If he can do it 2 consecutive times, we'll say he's achieved his goals and we can start to move on to the next goal. Okay, so this was an example that was to be talked. And how will we measure this? Why did we choose these measures? Because they are measured differently. So if you look at the goals, how we have done that, he will 2 out of 2 consecutive trials over 2 weeks. The next one was over 2 consecutive trials, 9 out of 10. We don't need it for 2 weeks, just 2 times you do it and we'll consider it done. So because there are different kinds of goals and we can choose different methods for the same information. We know rote counting is important. That is why we've chosen the goals. So make sure you have a rationale for the goal as well. Okay, so now you get to be the scientists and the teachers, and you get to decide whether some goals are smart or not. Okay, and I'm going to launch the poll in a little bit. Let me see how I can launch my poll. Are you ready? You'll have to tell me whether this goal is smart or not. The goal is Edgar will understand how to write accurately. Oops. This was the goal. Edgar will understand how to write accurately. Is this a smart goal? Okay, we've got a divided group, almost 2 more seconds, okay? Then I'll close the poll. Okay. Well, I can't see who's answering, so you're welcome because these polls are anonymous, okay? So do feel free to submit your answers because you want to commit to it and it's still anonymous, so nobody sees your answers, individual answers. I only see group answers. Okay, I'm going to share this. You have said 15% said yes, it's a smart goal, and 43% says no. Okay, let's see what the verdict is. It is a no all along. It's not specific. What does it mean to write accurately? Does it mean write 2-page essay, or does it mean write a sentence? Does it mean write with grammatical accuracy, or does it mean with comprehensive accuracy where somebody can understand creative, right? So it's not specific. Is it measurable? When will I know he's written accurately? Because I don't even know what accuracy is here, right? So I won't know when. Is it attainable? No. I struggle at whatever age I am in as a full professor to write accurately, right? I don't know how to write accurately, even after so many years. So it's not a goal as non-specific as this is not attainable. And then it's relevant. It could be a yes or a no. The reason it's a no is that because again, the writing accurately. What is the purpose of that writing accurately? Okay. And then is it time bound? No, because we didn't say in how many months or years that we need to make it accurate. Okay. So in your mind, start thinking about what would have made this an accurate, a relevant, smart goal. Okay, let's try one more. This is another goal. When asked by the teacher, Kayla will behave appropriately for 3 consecutive weeks. Is this a SMART goal? About 5 more seconds, and then I'll close the poll. Okay, we've got another little bit divided, and I'm not sure is also a relevant answer. Oops. So let me tell you what we say. Is it specific?
Answer yes for the man.
A little bit specific, but not quite. It will behave appropriately. What does it mean to be behaving appropriately? And that is why the measurable, because we don't know. Again, as adults, we struggle to behave appropriately across different contexts, right? So it's not measurable because we don't know what behaving appropriately is. Is it attainable? Because we don't know how to measure it. Again, because we don't know what behaving appropriately means. Is it sitting? Is it listening? Does it mean, because of that word? Is it relevant? Absolutely. In multiple social emotional contexts, because you are talking about classrooms behaving appropriately in those contexts is absolutely. Is it time bound? Yes, because it says for 3 consecutive weeks. So while it meets some of the criteria, it does not meet all the criteria. Okay? Okay, one more. Again, think about how you could have made this into a SMART goal. Oh, that was it. There were only 2 of them. Okay, any questions on these SMART goals? Or anything that I've said so far?
There was a question in the chat that I wanted to bring to your notice. Someone
Yeah.
said, as we were taught, we were asked to disclose every data to parents concerning the children. So what if a parent does not like getting negative reports concerning their children? What should I do? Should I leave some data undisclosed?
So here's the way, again, it's about how you present the data, right? Think of yourself in a physician's office, in a doctor's office, Dr. Cooper. What is the data that there might be? You might have to use some prudence, right? So what is relevant for the family to know? So you might not share every ounce of my reporting, but you might still want to share the crux of what the information has been, and how you share becomes very relevant because you're connecting it to why it's important for them to know, right? So every time ask yourself a question, as I'm sharing these data, will the parents understand the links that I shared, that Grace will share? They actually have some good questions for you to answer before sharing the data. Or like, is this relevant for the family to know? Is it going to help the family in helping their child? Will it help them in participating in goal development and strategies? All of that, right? So sometimes if I had an illness, I would like to know, but I also want the physician to tell me how I can cure that illness, right? So it's not just about them telling me that I have an illness. It's about them telling me that what can I do to cure it? And when you can package it that way, I think most families will want to know that information because it gives them words to talk to with their friends, anybody else who asks them about their child. Because what you are doing is giving them words to explain their child's behavior. So if the child has been very naughty, has not been behaving, or has not been doing work in classroom and has not been doing as well. If you say the child has dyslexia, for example, is not been doing well in their writing, but this is how I can help them. It gives the family that language also to be able to share with either other professionals or other members who may be like, oh my gosh, your child is not doing well. Yes, my child is not doing well, but we are doing these things to help my child. Okay, so give the family as much language as possible to understand their child. Okay, anything else? Okay, I have a case story. We can take about 10 minutes, Grace. Do you think we can take 10 minutes to do this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, what I need you to do is pull out your phone and take a picture of the slide. So this is a case story about Erasto, who's a a young boy in second grade. He's a middle child in a family of 3 boys and lives with his mom and stepfather. The home is stable, structured. Their income is stable as well. Erasto was born in Somalia, and he is in your country. And you can substitute it with a child in Nigeria. You can substitute it with a child in India. The concerns that the teacher has are that he displays some behavioral concerns as well as academic concerns. His teachers are not sure of his reading ability, but they believe that he's reading significantly below grade level. His speaking ability also seems lagging behind that of his peers. Erasto is able to understand and speak English, but has extreme difficulty with articulation. So think about what is the information that we know and what is it that we still need to find out. Erasto's teachers are also not sure of his math ability. Grace, while we are doing this, do you mind developing a breakout room with 4 people in each?
Okay.
English, but has extreme difficulty with articulation. Erasto's teachers are also not sure of his math ability. And they've stated that, but he's not able to complete second grade math like other students in the classroom, and he needs a lot of assistance. On the other side, he refuses to go to school. He does write, but he writes slowly and complains that his hand hurts. His letters are often incorrect, size, shapes. His handwriting is very difficult to read. And Erasto has said that he hates writing. What I want you all to do in your group for 10 minutes is, if you are Erasto's teacher, what would be your next steps? What additional information would you need to identify goals, and what goals would you focus on? Are we ready, Grace, with the breakout room? So make sure you have the a picture of this, because you won't be able to see the slide later, okay? I'm going to put into your breakout room. You will join what group you are in. Oh, I'm sorry, Grace, I miss said what I wanted. I want 4 people per room.
Oh, 4 people per room. Okay, I can do that. Okay.
Because this is too large a room.
I'm trying to close it, but it's saying it'll close in 29 seconds.
Yeah. While we are waiting for the breakout rooms, if there are any questions, please do share. I know it's really late for you all in the night. So thank you for staying on and participating, as you've been an awesome group so far. 8 rooms would be good.
8. Okay.
Okay, are we ready? So your rooms are created, and please do join.
So you should be able to see a prompt asking you to join your room. Please go ahead and join. We still have people here who haven't joined their groups.
How do we join, please?
Okay, so if you take a look at your device, phone, laptop, whatever you're using, there should be a prompt asking you to join room 1, room 2, room 3. Can you see anything like that?
I've not seen now.
Okay.
I've not
Are you using a phone?
seen it.
Are you using a phone?
Yes, I'm using a phone.
Okay. It should pop up on the phone. Okay, I'll just assign you to. I'll assign people to rooms. We still have. So the people here, let me ask, is it that you're not able to join your group? Do you have any difficulty? So I can. Charity, Patience, Mrs. Ovili. Do you have any difficulty joining your groups?
There isn't anyone talking in the breakout room, so is there?
So, but do you have participants there as well?
There's just one person, then just two people.
You can't. So did you get the picture of the discussion? You can start the discussion.
Yeah, I did say hi, hello, but no one's actually responded.
Oh.
So I came back here.
Let me put you in another room, Okpeyemi and Adedeji. Some other groups are really having, they are discussing, and I can see that Okpeyemi and
Yeah, lafiya. Kai, kalo. Sanu da ayyuka daga Ohafiya muna zuwa yanzu.
Grace, what about the folks here? Are they not able to get into their rooms?
I think so. So I'm trying to move them into other groups. But some
They
are
are already in groups,
responding.
they just have to say yes to it, I think.
Yeah, there was someone who said they weren't seeing getting the prompt.
Want to pause your recording, Grace?
What did you say?
You probably want to pause recording.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry if the instructions were not as clear as we would have liked them to be in for this breakout room, because we didn't have a lot of time. It was more for you to think about this case story than actually. Ideally, if we had a whole session, I would ask you to develop an IEP for this student. Maybe that's phase two, part two of this conversation. But what would you, let me share my screen again so you can see the case story again. What I'd asked you to do was to read this case story, take a picture before you left, and then say what would be the next step for this child. Does anybody want to share anything? If you were this child's teacher, the student's teacher, what would you be doing? What would your next steps be?
You can be friendly to him, teach him with songs and stories and song gifts.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we can move on with other things. With those gifts and stories, you can get his attention so that you can impart what you want to achieve. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that, Priscilla. You've got some good strategies there for working on. But even before we get into that strategies, what would you need before that? Because
I
we
believe,
know he's reading. Sorry, go ahead.
yes, I believe we would need an assessment done because
Mm-hmm.
the child's needs appear to cut across several areas.
Mm-hmm.
I would also think that the assessment would need to be a multidimensional assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a speech and language assessment might be needed because there are some articulation issues mentioned. Maybe an
Yeah.
occupational therapy assessment too, because of his writing. And then that
Mm-hmm.
sort of help, gives us a baseline.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. We need the baseline. Ronke, you seem to agree as well. Yes, we need the baseline. on his, because we know there are delays, but we don't know the specificity of those delays and what exactly that delay is in math or in literacy. And then he doesn't like writing. His hand hurts. He doesn't want to go to school. I wouldn't want to go to school if I wasn't successful in school, right? And so he hates writing because I'm not successful when we're not successful. So an assessment would be helpful. That's a first. And then trying some of the strategies, as Priscilla suggested, and seeing if it changes his behavior a little bit. Good. Thank you. Thank you for humoring. We're almost out of time, or actually, we are out of time. Thank you for staying on for so long. I know it's really late in the night for all of you. And for folks from India, it's midnight for you all. Here is my email and my information. You can take a picture of this slide. And please reach out to me if I can help with anything at all. If you've got questions, if you need more resources about something, refer to this
Webinar.
session, because you know how it goes about the people. We get a lot of spam from Nigeria and India and some of the countries. So it might go into my spam box if you don't tell me, like, this is a reference to this session that we attended, okay? So let me know, and then I'll see you around. Thank you for attending today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee. It was a great session, I must say. Before I go on, I'd like to say that there's a question in the chat box. No, it responds to the question you asked. Juliet says, make him your friend and class monitor. With love, he will get better with time.
Yeah, good suggestions. And then
And
always
everyone said,
encourage.
yeah,
Absolutely.
encourage him.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything. I just wanted to say, like you mentioned while you were talking, there can't be a part 2 to this because we can't exhaust everything in just one meeting. And so, but I'd like to let everyone know, first of all, I want to thank you for showing up. Thank you for being a part of this. It's always good to connect and always ask ourselves questions and just also learn from people. What are the best practices here? What are the best practices there? And we keep learning from one another. A few announcements that I would like to make. First of all, we're meeting tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. Nigerian time. It's 10:30 p.m. Indian time. So sorry about that. We'll work on that better next time. And then tomorrow, we're talking about social emotional development in early childhood classrooms. You don't want to miss it. There are kids in our classrooms who, if we don't teach them how to behave, if we don't show them, if we don't give them the tools that they need, if we don't give them the right language that they need, they won't know how to. And so it is very critical that as a teacher, as a therapist, as a professional working with a child with disability or just working with any child, that I have the right tools myself. I'll give you an example. So in my classroom, so let's assume this is my classroom and 2 kids are playing and one grabs the other person's toy. And I work with toddlers, by the way, 2, 3 years old. And so someone grabs the toy of another child and A has a toy, B grabs the toy from A. A begins to cry and whine. What do you do as a teacher? Do you ask B to give back the toy to A, or what would you do? And so what we do and what our practice is I don't even say anything to B, first of all. I look at A is crying, A is whining, and I'm like, A, B doesn't know what you're saying when you're whining, when you're crying. What do you want to say? Do you want to say, stop, I don't like it, or that's mine, you can't take it? Is that what you want to say? And then A goes like, stop, I don't like it. I just offered A the language to use, the right words to use, because A may not know. And so as a teacher, that's what you're there to do. And then A says to B, that's mine, or I need space, or I don't like that, stop. B should stop. And if B doesn't stop, then you can take a look at B and say, B, you know, our friends don't like when we grab their toys. Our friends don't like when we hit them. Our friends don't like when we, you know, like that. And so a lot of things that we need to know. And that's what we'll be discussing tomorrow. And it'll be a practical session. And I'll send out an email, a meeting invite, and then reminding you as well at the same time. Another thing is I have compiled resources that I would like to share. And I'll be sharing them via the emails, you know, through the registration link that you did and the emails that you shared with me. I'll send the resources to you and let me know if there are resources that you need, that you would like to have that are not included. I'm happy to. Let me also know, I would send another survey asking you what topics, what areas do you think you need help with, so that I'm able to know and then get resource persons who would be able to, you know, talk to those topics. I know we have something coming up. We have a session coming up on IEP. It's going to be everything you need to know about IEP and how to write IEP. And even for parents, how should parents participate in an IEP meeting? How should you as a teacher participate in an IEP meeting? It's something that if we are able to have good, productive IEP meetings, the child is going to make a lot of progress, and you as a teacher or you as the school versus the family, you're going to have a good partnership and you're able to work together. We're also going to have a session on transition plan. So the child is done with primary school, with secondary school, what next and how do we go about that? So watch the space for emails and for notifications about these topics. Thank you so much again for joining. If you don't mind, if you're able to have your video on so we can take a quick picture, I would like us to do that. If that's not possible, yeah, we can also do it this way. If you're able to, I'll just give us a few seconds to come online if we're able, come on the video if we're able to, otherwise. And if you'd like to be in the video, yeah, please stay on. Thank you for coming.
I'm not here.
One more second. Thank you so much. I know it's night time and it's okay. And so we'll take it 1, 2. So we have to, so we'll stay on. I have 2 pages. I'm taking the first one now. I did. I'm taking the second one. Don't forget to smile if you want to.
Hi.
Okay, I took the picture.
Hello.
Thank you very much again for joining. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Do not miss it for anything. And if you have questions, please use the same email that I have been using to get in touch with you to put your questions across. Till tomorrow, it's bye-bye from me. And thank you again, Dr. Banerjee, for joining. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I see you all. Bye.
See you, everyone. Thank you.